Find us online at lincolnprintersinc.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Peking Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest on this segment of the WHOW Morning Show is Mr. Dan Caulkins, State Representative Dan Caulkins. And Dan, how are you this morning, sir?
Doing great, thanks. How are you, Seth?
Doing well. Thanks for asking, and thanks for making time for us as always. We'll catch up in a bit about the summer season and what you're working on and what lawmakers do during this downtime. But before we get to some of that, Dan, let's get your reaction to the election from a few weeks ago. Of course, Darren Bailey takes home the Republican nomination for the candidate for governor, and he will challenge J.B. Pritzker in November, and just some other local races and things that took place in Central Illinois from the election results. What did you take away from that Tuesday in July?
Well, I think it was maybe a little bit biased, but I thought it was going to be an obvious victory, for Darren last fall when they started their full-on campaign. Darren has been out working for several months before he announced. And then, he's built up a statewide organization, got the volunteers in every county. And when he announced, he'd already handed out, like 20,000 yard signs. So it was obvious to me anyway, that he had built up a statewide organization. It was going to be a very formidable. And this is, after all, a Republican primary. So it wasn't a general election, and Darren was running a very strong Republican primary campaign. I honestly couldn't have predicted, over 50%, 55% of the vote that he got. But I think it was very convincing, and it certainly tells the Republicans where their base is.
Yeah, how about that aspect of it, Dan? How about and just weigh in, I guess, on other victories you thought significant and what that tells us about perhaps, conservatives in Illinois. What do you take away from other results and how that bodes for what's next, I guess?
Well, if you look at what happened in both parties, actually, it's pretty interesting. The Democrats lost 3 incumbents to more liberal or far left candidates. The Republican incumbents, we lost 2 incumbents to challenges from the right. And some of that had to do with redistricting. The maps that were drawn were more conservative than the candidates. I don't know too much about what happened to the Democrats. But I think people, particularly middle of the road and Republicans, are becoming more conservative as we see the results of this far left government that Pritzker has imposed on us, as well as nationally. All of the far left agenda that's being promoted. I think people are shifting to the right. The pendulum tends to swing, as we know, from one side to the other. So I think this actually what happened was that I don't know what you want to call them, the powers to be, the Republican establishment, sorely underestimated where the electorate is, and essentially lost several races, primary races, against more conservative challengers.
No doubt. So with that said there, Dan, how about what's next for not just Republicans in Illinois, but the general election in November? How about what you're hearing or seeing in terms of whether it's polling numbers or data and things of that nature? What are the trends that are standing out to you?
Well, we're several of the conservative Republicans that got through the primary process are going to serve. They're unopposed. They're in conservative districts that the Democrats did not run candidates in. So we're going to see a more conservative House Republican caucus come January. Statewide, we had Dan Brady from Bloomington convincing 60 some odd percent of the vote against an Irvin backed opponent. So that was good. In the governor's race, everybody said if Darren Bailey wins, he's going to be down 15 to 20 points just, the day after. And actually the polls showed him down about 7 points. I think as people figure this out as we go through the summer, I know right now the Roe v. Wade and the pro-life, pro-choice argument is pretty intense. But I think if you pay attention to the national polls, Seth, that issue ranks about 5th when people are asked what's most important. Yes, it's getting a lot of attention today. The pro-life movement is very loud, very well funded, whereas the pro-choice movement kind of, we're working away quietly in the background. So the media will cover that noise. But as we see our power bills come in, as we watch violence, crime in our communities explode, and our roads aren't getting any better, I think people are going to shift their focus away come November. And I think Mr. Bailey, has a decent chance to pull this off.
Again, our guest on the phone, State Representative Dan Caulkins, with us. From your perspective, Dan, what should the messaging be for not just Darren Bailey, but Illinois Republicans running running in November? What should their messaging be about specifically energy and costs of things such as gas and food primarily? That's kind of the one that I think hits people's pocketbooks the most over the course of a month and a year. What should their messaging be about some of those areas and how they can fix that and make it better for Illinois families? Because I feel like messaging is going to be, that's going to be what drives home maybe victories for Republicans in November. How about that?
Well, you're right, and it is all about messaging, and the Republicans are going to need to be very consistent, as in any campaign, but this year particularly. The Democrats and Governor Pritzker, by the way, we just got our 31st consecutive executive order mandate from the governor. He now continues to rule the state by emergency proclamation for the 31st time. I don't think anyone in their right mind believes we're still under a COVID emergency. We haven't been. This is a terrible abuse of power. But it tells you a lot about the governor, and it tells you a lot about the Democrats in Illinois who have allowed this to continue. They are the majority, in fact, the supermajority in the General Assembly, and not lifted one finger. They've not said one word about this terrible abuse of power by Governor Pritzker. So I think that's going to be an issue. But the pocketbook issues, the energy crisis is completely the making of Governor Pritzker and the Democrat majority. They passed these new Green Deal bills. They've shut down essentially almost all of our coal-fired generators. They've made it economically, unfeasible to build any new power generators in Illinois. They've outlawed the building of any new nuclear power plants in Illinois. And this is a radical group of people who have an agenda, and they'll push that agenda at the expense of us, our power bills, our electric bills. So that message has to go. We continue to talk about the defund the police, the Safety Act that's made our city streets less safe. I read a story this last week about a Collier County jail that has 638 inmates. And the sheriff, I believe it was the sheriff, said on January 1st, when this new bill takes place, he's got to set them all free. He's going to put he would have to put 638 criminals back on the streets because of this bill. Mm-hmm. And people are going to see that. They're going to hear that all summer. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that we have to talk about. They are the Democrat playbook. That's their agenda. And the people of Illinois, I believe, are not going to stand for it.
Yeah, and just is there anything tangible that you can give people that says we will do this to help in the crime and those things? I think it's just a matter of a change in leadership and prosecuting and keeping criminals behind bars and such. But how about tangible things we can do on energy? Lowering our energy costs. Bringing back energy where we're not going to be threatened with brownouts and blackouts and all of those things. And how about grocery costs and the cost of food and that sort of thing? What tangible things can Illinois Republicans do that would help people that you can message? How about that?
Well, the first thing that we can do is stop the closure of the 2 coal plants that are scheduled to go down in September. We can either stop the closure of those coal plants. If we can't get that done before then come January, and we have a governor and we have a General Assembly that's more amenable, we can rescind some of this Green New Deal stuff. They're doing it in Indiana. They're doing it in Alabama. I mean, they're doing it all over because people realize now that, yeah, we want a cleaner environment. We want, less dirty air, but we cannot do that at the expense of our economy. And we're going to have people this summer who are going to be having to make some serious choices because their power bills are going through the roof. And if you're on a fixed income, what are you going to do? And then the other part of it is, what are businesses doing? They're going to start looking at relocating, and that's going to be a huge blow to our economy. But so we can address that very simply. We can make this environment better, allow people to come in and build these gas-fired peaker plants. They're building them all over. Indiana's installing them. Even California is putting them in, and Illinois won't allow that because we've capped their emissions and told our generators that they're going to have to close in 10 or 12 years. So who's going to come and put millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into a new plant only to see it closed before they could ever recoup their investment?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, Dan, I'll tell you what, let's take a break here, my friend. Come back and talk some more. State Representative Dan Caulkins is on the phone with us here for this morning. The morning show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Peking Insurance agent in Clinton. More to come on the morning show.
WHOW.
Your own home without the maintenance. If you're 55 or better, a beautiful Liberty Village villa could be yours. This is Erin, and I invite you to come take a tour of our move-in ready villa. Click the Liberty Village icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Simply the finest.
DeWittDailyNews.com is the area's leading local news source 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Get the latest local news, obituaries, police blotter, weather forecast, and more with no paywall. Head to DeWittDailyNews.com to get the local information you need to know.
Life is uncertain. Stop in and see me, State Farm Agent Jason France, on the west side of the Clinton Square, or click our icon at DeWittDailyNews.com and see how our full lineup of State Farm insurance and financial services can help protect your family.
Local farm broadcaster Jared White covers the local agriculture news you need to know. Hear his reports by downloading the free WHOW mobile app.
DeWitt County's only locally owned, locally managed media source is also your #1 source for local news. Hear the latest local news every hour on the half hour on all of the WHOW platforms, including AM, FM streamed, and on the WHOW mobile app and Amazon Alexa. And hear local news on the hour on your easy choice, 95.9 WEZC. And read it free 24/7 at DeWittDailyNews.com, on air or online. Our WHOW WEZC at DeWittDailyNews.com have you covered 24 hours a day.
Let's swing open the farm gate together every day on WHOW. I'm Stu Ellis, your host of the long-running agriculture feature called The Farm Gate. I bring the latest news and information on where agriculture is and where it's going to WHOW Ag listeners several times a day. From tariffs to treaties, from the Board of Trade to the running board on your truck, I cover Central Illinois agriculture every day on the Farm Gate. Hear it all on WHOW's many platforms, on the radio or online. Join me, Stu Ellis, for the Farm Gate.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. State Representative Dan Caulkins is on the phone with us here for this morning. And Mr. Representative, of course, we had in the last week or so, 4th of July holiday in Highland Park was turned tragic with the mass shooting in their community. Just your thoughts on that situation, and some of the conversations that have, as usual, stem from, gun violence. And particularly now that it's in Illinois, it seems like it's a close to home conversation. So how about that to get us started in this segment?
Well, it's obviously a huge tragedy. I mean, this is a terrible event in a very quiet, peaceful little community outside of Chicago. I don't know how you would ever describe it. I think the after effects will continue for years to come. The families that lost members, the children that lost parents. I don't know how you cope with that. And I have no words to describe, how we feel about it, or how I feel about it. It's a terrible mess, and I wish there was some way that we could, be helpful. I know there's some GoFundMe's up there, and maybe we can do a fundraiser or something, but it's bad. But the thing that's most discouraging to me is the immediate call from the left, from the governor and from several Democrats for more gun control. And it's just shameless pandering. We just had a Supreme Court ruling on the Second Amendment. It was very, very specific. People think that ruling only affected concealed carry, but that's not the case. If you read, if your listeners will go through and look at a complete reading of that opinion, it clearly talks about common use weapons, and it talks about people having the right to keep those weapons. This call to ban the AR-15 based rifles are unconstitutional, clearly stated by the Supreme Court. But if you look at what happened in Highland, they've had a very troubled and challenged ban on these type of weapons for many years, and it's been in and out of courts. Now, I'm sure no one is going to challenge it now after this tragedy, but it certainly doesn't comply with the Supreme Court ruling. The other thing that's quite evident is that we see the federal government trying to promote what Illinois has in place, and that's these red flag laws. We now know, we have proof certain here in Illinois that they don't work. There were lots of red flags about this individual, and these red flag laws do not work, and for the most part anyway. And when they do work, it's often used in a divorce setting or a revenge setting, where someone will turn in a neighbor or a spouse in the midst of a divorce proceedings as part of some type of punitive adjudication. If it is, I think it's also unconstitutional. I think a person should be innocent until proven guilty. I don't think that you should be able to drive up and on a hearsay and take somebody's rifle or pistol or shotgun just because somebody says that they heard or saw or think something. I think that individual should have their day in court and be able to defend themselves before they lose their Second Amendment rights, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when it comes to that situation, it was pretty abundantly clear the individual had, serious home issues, a broken home in terms of parents had been separated and those sorts of things. I'm not saying we shouldn't discuss guns and the merits of, how much artillery an individual needs, but I also think the conversation needs to talk about the impacts of fathers and, two parents in the home and all those sorts of things, which we never really ever seem to get from either side in this situation.
Well, the Republicans have been very vocal about that. We've advocated for two parents in the home. We've advocated that, if you're a father of a child, you should be responsible for raising that child. We've also advocated for more mental health, but the Democrats don't want to put that in a budget. They'd rather do, projects that, I don't know what you want to call it, things that will, I guess, get them more votes in their hometown, I don't know. I got to be careful how I say this, but, we've advocated for more mental health. My proposal that we put money in the budget for law enforcement and mental health services got incorporated into the Democrats' budget this year. I mean, they clearly, and they blatantly and admittedly took my request for $20 million to go for mental health for our law enforcement, first responders. So there is some movement, but the initiatives don't seem to come from the Democrats. It's coming from the Republicans. And, we tend to be the party now of the blue collar workers, people who are struggling to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
And the Democrats tend to be tax and spend and their political agendas, their social agendas.
Sure. Dan, I don't mean to do this to you, sir. I got to cut you off and let you go for the day. Dan Caulkins, state representative, on the phone with us. The morning show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance.